Next on the news, the deadline for Title 42 to be lifted has passed, but there's still concerns for the migrants at the border and whether they'll cross into the U.S. Also, a developing story, the latest on that deadly subway shooting and how a pastor negotiated for the surrender of the suspect. And a response from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi after she was banned from receiving communion in the Archdiocese of San Francisco. Plus,
pure satisfaction that I had attained my goal of walking across Northwood.
An 84-year-old grandmother's dream to graduate college becomes a reality. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. We begin with a developing story out of Texas. An elementary school in the town of Uvalde was forced into lockdown after a gunman went on a rampage. There are reports of multiple casualties, but the exact number is not known at this time. Local police have posted on social media that the shooter is in custody. Injured students from Robb Elementary are being treated at a Uvalde hospital emergency room, and some patients were transferred to a San Antonio hospital. The school district says a nearby civic center is being used as a place where parents can reunite with their children. Now to another developing story. The suspect wanted in connection with a deadly subway shooting has been taken into custody. 25-year-old Andrew Abdullah was placed under arrest Tuesday afternoon. According to a local radio report, a pastor assisting in Abdullah's surrender arrived at the station house earlier as the talks were still underway. The New York Post is also reporting that the suspect handed off the gun to a homeless person after the shooting on Sunday. 48-year-old Daniel Enriquez was killed in the shooting while riding a Q train bound for Manhattan. The suspect had a long rap sheet ahead of Sunday's shooting. He's been arrested 19 times over the past decade. Let's look at some of his charges. In June of 2019, he was paroled after he pleaded guilty to attempted criminal possession of a weapon and conspiracy charges. He violated his parole 6 months later after he was arrested with a loaded gun. He was released after posting a $100,000 bail. In March of 2021, he was arrested again for a domestic assault and endangering the welfare of a child. And in April of 2022, he was arrested in connection to a stolen car. 3 of those cases are still ongoing. Abdullah was due back in court for one of them on June 6th. The deadline has come and gone, but Title 42 remains in place for now at the southern border. The Trump-era pandemic rule that allows officials to quickly deport migrants was supposed to be lifted Monday, but a judge ruled to keep it. Despite that, migrants continue to head for the border. Large migrant crowds gathering at the Yuma, Arizona border, marking their arrivals with calls to loved ones, photos, and even group selfies. These migrants arrived on May 23rd, the day the CDC set as Title 42's expiration date, seeking a new start in the United States.
I'm looking for security and a better life. It will help my family.
According to Customs and Border Protection, Title 42 has been used to deport close to 2 million migrants since the pandemic began in March of 2020. But over 20 states, including Arizona, sued the CDC over its attempt to end the policy. A federal judge ruled in favor of the states keeping Title 42 alive at the border, at least for the near future. Bishop Edward Weissenberger of the Diocese of Tucson says he's disappointed by the news, saying in a statement, "I have seen firsthand the impact that it has on vulnerable families who have fled violence and now find themselves stranded on the Mexican side of the border. Because of Title 42, mothers, fathers, and children are stuck in situations of danger and economic precarity." And the news may not have reached migrants waiting near the border in Mexico.
We heard that the last date will be the 23rd, so that's why the people are rushing.
According to Arizona lawmakers, even larger crowds were here Sunday night, potentially contributing to migrants waiting a long time to be apprehended.
I have been here since 5 o'clock yesterday. I am hungry and thirsty. and it's very hot.
The safety of the large groups is concerning to Fernie Quiroz, who runs a humanitarian group providing water and food to migrants. He says he understands Border Patrol may be backlogged, but says long waits at the wall are dangerous as the summer nears.
Because we live in the extreme heat here. The last thing we want is somebody to fall ill because of lack of water. And it's just the right and humane thing to do.
Yuma is reporting the biggest percentage increase in migrant apprehensions, with border agents stopping 4 times as many migrants as they did last year. According to Customs and Border Patrol, there have been nearly 2.9 million encounters with migrants between April of 2020, the first full month after Title 42 went into effect, and March of 2022. Of that number, nearly 1.8 million, or 61%, were expelled. Looking deeper into the data, 88% were single adults, 11% were families, and 1% were unaccompanied minors. More than half of those migrants were from Mexico, while the rest were from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and other countries. Catholic Charities USA is calling for an end to the Trump-era policy, saying in a statement following the preliminary injunction, Title 42 is not the answer. Comprehensive immigration reform is. U.S. and international law uphold the right for families to migrate, and the gospel calls us to welcome them. Our laws must create pathways, not obstacles. New York City Mayor Eric Adams is cracking down on the price gouging of baby formula. Emergency Executive Order 98 allows the city's Department of Consumer and Worker Protection to prevent price hikes for the formula. And that hike is defined as an increase of 10% or more. Any New Yorkers who encounter price gouging are encouraged to report them to 311. The move by Adams is meant to help parents who have been desperate to find formula. One mom in Nebraska endured a parent's worst nightmare when she couldn't find her daughter's normal brand and opted for another. Her 3-month-old went into anaphylactic shock. Abby Peterson reports.
Hey, baby girl, is your tummy full?
3-month-old Adelina's doing much better than she was just over a week ago. On May 15th, her mom, Natalia Renteria, was up in the middle of the night looking for Enfamil Gentlease. She says it was impossible to find, so she settled on a brand she hadn't used before.
It was the liquid form, and I had already kind of been skeptical.
She says Adelina started to get a rash after the first bottle.
It wasn't just her face, it was half of her body. And that's when we decided that we needed to get her into the doctor immediately.
Adelina's grandma, Jessica Reyes, says they rushed the baby to CHI Health St. Elizabeth.
I said, wait, she's not breathing, and the nurse turned around, snatched her, and took off with her. We just went running behind her, but it was heart-wrenching because her face just turned blue, and she just was so limp in my arms.
Reyes says doctors gave Adelina an allergy medicine right away.
Like 5 doctors came in, and I'm just standing there like crying. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to help her. I really couldn't help her. There's nothing really I could do.
Turns out Adelina's allergic to soft flour and eggs. The primary care medical director for CHI Health says formula changes can cause a range of reactions.
They can be mild from just a rash to the baby, or severe to the point of anaphylaxis, where the throat swells up and baby can potentially stop breathing.
CHI Health says fortunately, this reaction is rare. Adelina is the first case they've seen so far since the shortage began. Her family just hopes store shelves are full again soon.
Hopefully that we bounce back and real soon, because these babies are in need.
Yes, they are.
That was Abby Peterson reporting. Officials are advising parents to call a physician if a new formula is being used. Adelina's mom says she will do more extensive testing on her allergies when she's 4 months old. From a national shortage to global challenges, President Biden is facing a flurry of them, including the war in Ukraine. On the final day of his historic trip to Asia, the commander-in-chief attended an in-person summit in Tokyo where they spoke about the conflict. Gloria Pazmino reports.
President Joe Biden is heading back home from Tokyo after a 5-day visit with Indo-Pacific leaders. The dozen Asia-Pacific nations are part of a new trade deal, which includes Japan, South Korea, and India. New maritime information sharing initiatives, COVID vaccines, and climate were all part of the agenda.
It is really about a shared vision of the Indo-Pacific, which they do want to see as a free, open, prosperous, inclusive, rules-based region.
Still, the ongoing conflict in Ukraine took center stage during Biden's in-person meeting Tuesday with leaders of Japan, India, and Australia, three of the so-called Quad nations.
We're navigating a dark hour in our shared history.
In a joint statement, leaders of the Indo-Pacific nations reiterated their, quote, strong resolve to maintain the peace and stability in the region.
The Russian brutal and unprovoked war against Ukraine has triggered a humanitarian catastrophe.
Russian attacks on Ukraine are grinding forward, the conflict now entering its third month. Ukrainian officials reported Russian aerial strikes continue in the east-central part of the country, with more heavy fighting in the Donetsk region.
There have been more than 3,000 airstrikes by Russian planes and helicopters. What other country has withstood such a scale of blows?
Gloria Pasmino, Current News.
Hong Kong Cardinal Joseph Zen celebrated a packed mass on Tuesday, just hours after appearing in court over charges linked to the city's pro-democracy protests. The 90-year-old prelate, along with 4 others, pleaded not guilty for allegedly failing to properly register their relief fund. The now-defunct charity had helped pay legal and medical costs for those arrested during Hong Kong's demonstrations 3 years ago. The court hearing just happened to coincide with the Feast of Mary, Help of Christians, a date marked by Catholics to pray for the church in China. And recalling this celebration, Pope Francis urged Catholics the world over to join him in praying for the faithful in China.
Vi invito a unirvi in questa preghiera affinché la Chiesa in Cina, in libertà e tranquillità, possa vivere in comunione effettiva con la Chiesa universale.
Back in 2007, Pope Benedict XVI proclaimed the Marian Feast Day to be a world day of prayer for the church in China. And he also composed a special prayer in hopes that Catholics there can proclaim their faith in freedom and tranquility. If you wish to join in on the World Day of Prayer for the church in China, then just head online to currentsny.tv. There you can find the full prayer Pope Benedict XVI composed for the special occasion. St. Andrew the Apostle Catholic Church in Brooklyn celebrated a big anniversary on Sunday. It was complete with a special mass, a grand raffle, and a gala dinner. The parishioners celebrated 50 years of service. The church was formed back in 1971 as a response to the opening of the Bay Ridge Towers. For their first 10 years, the parish held their weekend masses at Salem Lutheran Church on 67th Street. It wasn't until 1981 that they decided to build a permanent church on the corner of Ridge Boulevard and Senator Street. There's a lot more news headed your way. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi speaks out on the communion ban imposed on her, calling it inconsistent. We'll explain. Plus, New York State cancels one of its regents exams, saying it could be traumatic for some students. And President Biden taking action on police reform. Why it's so significant now.
There are now some big changes to the tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has finally responded to a communion ban imposed by the shepherd of the Archdiocese of San Francisco, Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone. Pelosi, speaking on MSNBC's Morning Joe, didn't directly question the decision. Instead, she brought up another life issue, saying, "I wonder about the death penalty, which I'm opposed to. So is the church, but they take no actions against people who may not share their view." Pelosi then went on to say that she herself comes from a largely pro-life Italian-American Catholic family, so she respects people's views about that, but she doesn't, quote, respect us foisting it onto others. Archbishop Cordileone says this decision came after years of prayer, fasting, and consultation with church leaders. Before Pelosi's response, the shepherd of the Archdiocese of San Francisco spoke more about it on America Media's The Gloria Purvis podcast.
I really would prefer not to do this, but I cannot in my conscience allow the situation to continue and cause this scandal. And people are getting confused, people are getting upset, and it's also fueling these flames of polarization and dissension. Some people might accuse me of doing that as well, but I just know in my conscience I have to do something to teach clearly about this evil and that there are solutions to this dilemma that we're in.
Archbishop Cordileone did speak well of Speaker Pelosi during that interview, saying he believes she is sincere when she speaks on how devout she is with her faith. He also said he is ready and willing to speak to her whenever, wherever, and however she wishes. She was simply known to friends and family as Kat, and they all gathered for a funeral for 72-year-old Catherine Massey, another victim from the Buffalo supermarket rampage. Ashley Rowe looks back on her life and legacy.
The music-filled service began with Reverend Frank Bostic sharing a story of determination about Catherine Massey, who lived down the road from him.
We just got some new trees, and she came and woke me up that morning.
Before family, friends, and dignitaries, he spoke of the trees she fought for to beautify Cherry Street in the Fruit Belt neighborhood.
And they tried to take these new trees back, and she said, no, 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 no. They said, well, they said, I don't care what they said. We're going to put these trees right here. That goes for his house, and we're going to put the other one here, and that's what we're going to do about it.
Kat remembered as a fierce advocate for her community.
She was a queen mother of this community. She was a leader, leading with warmth and intelligence and the power of her pen.
Massey fought to reduce gun crime and improve education. Buffalo Board of Education member Sharon Belton-Cotman, Kat's longtime friend, offering assurances to a broken community.
We cannot allow anyone to steal our joy or try to take from us. It's not an option.
After family paid their respects, Pastor Bostic energizing Pilgrim Baptist Church.
Our work down here is done. And so we hear you say,
with collective gratitude for Kat Massey's tireless work.
well done. Well done. Well done. Well done.
That was Ashley Rowe reporting. If you're watching this at 7 p.m., there's still time to pre-register for tonight's online prayer service for the victims of the Buffalo supermarket rampage. It will pay tribute to the 10 people killed in the mass shooting at the Top supermarket more than a week ago. It's being hosted by the Knights of Peter Claver and the Ladies Auxiliary Subcommittee on Racism. Again, it's tonight, Tuesday, May 24th at 8:30 p.m. The Zoom link is kofpc.org/Buffalo. The trauma from that supermarket rampage has led education officials to cancel a state exam. Content experts who were reviewing all New York State Regents tests determined the June 1st U.S. History and Government exam had the potential to compound student trauma caused by the recent violence in Buffalo. That's according to a spokesperson from the Education Department who did not give specifics on what on the test might cause that trauma. The department is asking the Board of Regents to grant students who were taking the exam in June, August, and January of 2023 an exemption. They say there isn't time to change the exam because the tests have already been printed and packaged for shipment. 2 years after the death of George Floyd, President Biden will announce plans to reform the police. He's set to issue an executive order on Wednesday, which marks 2 years since Floyd died after being handcuffed and pinned to the ground by a Minneapolis police officer. The order will direct all federal agencies to revise their use of force policies. It will create a national registry of officers who have been fired for misconduct and will require federal agents to intervene if they see other officers using excessive force. The president of the European Commission has accused Russia of deliberately bombarding grain warehouses across Ukraine and weaponizing food supplies.
For some, this brought back memories from a dark past, the times of the Soviets, crop seizures, and the devastating famine of the 1930s.
Speaking at the World Economic Forum, President von der Leyen says the most fragile countries are suffering the most, citing bread prices in Lebanon have increased by 70%, and food shipments from Odessa have been blocked from reaching Somalia. An all-star cast came out Monday night to take part in Carnegie Hall's Concert for Ukraine. The event was hosted by Richard Gere and featured numerous performances, including the Ukrainian Chorus Dumka of New York, who opened the show with their country's national anthem. All of the proceeds from the one-night event are earmarked for Direct Relief, a nonprofit that provides medical supplies to relief grounds in Ukraine. Still to come on Currents News, it's an outdoor graduation to remember, the surprise high school seniors in Colorado got for their commencement ceremony. And it was a degree put on hold, how a Minnesota woman finally reached a goal she set 67 years ago. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. It's graduation season right now, but for the thousands of high school seniors in Colorado, the traditional pomp and circumstance also included a bit of snow. The late spring snowstorm forced some ceremonies to move indoors, but others powered through the wintry weather. Guests wore ponchos, some used umbrellas, and others took shelter under trees. Luckily, the graduates got to sit under the stage as they received their diplomas, which they hoped were still dry.
I'm excited. I feel like it's going to be different than like any other graduation, and like I feel like it'll be more memorable.
It'll go down in probably our school's history and, you know, maybe Red Rock's history, so it's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, no thanks. Most graduation ceremonies in and around Denver have been moved indoors, and meteorologists there say the area is expecting as much as 20 inches of snow. Wow. And finally, it was a moment that was 67 years in the making. One graduate at the University of Minnesota finally got the opportunity to walk across the stage and get her diploma. Marielle Mose was at the ceremony and introduces us to the 84-year-old graduate.
Betty Sanderson.
It's just pure joy, pure joy. Pure satisfaction that I had attained my goal of walking across Northrop.
The first person in her family to go to college.
This is my letter of acceptance, dated July 7th, 1955.
She went to the University of Minnesota to get her license to be a nurse, a program that only took her a year.
This is my graduating class from the nursing.
She continued taking college courses, but was eventually taken off course when she met her husband and followed his career moves, never finishing her degree.
I was about 25 credits, approximately 25, 28 credits short when I started back.
After raising 2 daughters and pursuing a decades-long nursing career, she eventually retired in 2013.
I was out to lunch with friends, and we were talking about bucket lists and things we wanted to do. And I said, I've always wanted to graduate from the U.
Determined to make that happen, Betty enrolled in classes at the U of M in fall of 2018, where her second time around was a lot different.
This is the University of Minnesota when I was here. There was no West Bank. You can see the parking lots that are now all buildings.
A larger campus is one thing, but technology was her biggest obstacle.
That computer business just almost did me in.
Going virtual during the peak of the pandemic nearly stopped her.
I had to drop both classes that I tried to take online. I couldn't do it.
But on May 7th, she did it.
You need to do what you want to do or what your goals are. Don't let anybody stop you.
That was Marielle Mose reporting, and congratulations to Betty. She says she doesn't know what else is in store for her, but she's already brainstorming ideas for her next big goal, so good luck to her. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.